Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and hello to anybody who is new here. I'm Poppy, I review books and it's taken me about 2 weeks to get around to reviewing this set of books because it's taken me 2 weeks to even process everything that happened in my life for the last 6 weeks whilst reading this particular series. I'm still not over it. I don't know if I'll ever be over it, but I'm going to try and gather my thoughts for this video. And gathering my thoughts just in general on a day-to-day basis is quite difficult, so I'm going to try my best. I made a list. I made a list so that I can kind of make sure that I don't miss or skip any points. But yes, I'm finally going to review one of the highest rated fantasy series on Goodreads that I've heard anybody ever speak about, which is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I finally got around to reading it. I did have in the middle a 6-month break, which I'll explain and get into why. The whole process of reading this series was just such a journey, but my God, was it worth it? Like seriously, was it worth it? Wow. So in this review, I'm going to talk to you about the reading order that I chose. I would actually have done it differently. And I think that also led into me having a break from it for 6 months because I stopped reading it in June and then I started reading it again at the end of December. So, and obviously I'll go in where I stopped, why I stopped, everything like that. But I will tell you the reading order that I chose as a beginner, what I would recommend as a beginner as well, reading it for the first time. I just don't actually know how I'm going to even try and articulate my thoughts on this because it actually like leaves me speechless and blows my mind. This specific box set is the one of the older printed books. They have since got new covers and I don't think you can just buy this like on Amazon or anything anymore. So I feel like I'm probably going to get people ask me that because they did ask me over on my TikTok where I got these specific covers from. I don't think you can get them anymore. She comes with like a map that you can actually pin on the wall. Do you know what I would love actually? I would love to have maps of every single fantasy book that I've read just take up a whole wall, like as in wallpaper. I might have to do that. Just a bit of background. I did read acotar. I read acotar over a year ago. I started acotar in December 2022, finished it in January last year. And that was all I've read from her. I haven't read Crescent City. And right off the bat, I'm going to say that Throne of Glass is better. Now, they are completely different. And in a way, you almost can't really compare them because they're so different. But I do feel like Throne of Glass, in terms of the plot, the characters, and the actual story, I think it's stronger. Way, way stronger. I love acotar. 2 of the books in there are some of my favourite books I've ever read. I give the whole series 5 stars. But if acotar is 5 stars and it's here, Throne of Glass is like, it's in a league of its own, if I'm being completely honest. But it's a slow burn. The whole series is a slow burner. And even still when you get to the end, it's not until you sit down and process everything that you've read that you actually realise how much of a masterpiece it truly is. So let's get into the reading order that I chose. There's 8 books in the box set. There's 2 companion novels. So Assassin's Blade and Tower of Dawn are actually companion novels that were written to give us context to storylines that either appear in the book or have started to appear, and just so that we can understand them a bit more. So there's 2 things that people are sort of in 2 minds of. It's 1, where you read Assassin's Blade, and 2, whether you do the tandem read or not. And some people also say whether you even read Tower of Dawn, which I think is ridiculous. Tower of Dawn is like a 650-page book. Why would it be written if it wasn't necessary? And it's so necessary, but I'll get to that in just a second. So a lot of people wonder where you should read it. So I read Assassin's Blade third. So it goes, obviously, Throne of Glass, Crown of Midnight. Then I read Assassin's Blade. Then I went into Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows. I tandem read Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn, and then obviously finished with Kingdom of Ash. So I actually stopped after Heir of Fire in June. I didn't continue because I wasn't enjoying the series, and I'll get into why in just a moment. All I will say right off the bat is, coming from me, who read Assassin's Blade as third, I would read it first. Knowing what I know now, and also knowing what we learn in Assassin's Blade, I think it needs to be read first. I think that it might make your start a bit slower and a bit more difficult to enter, because Throne of Glass is very, very slow, the first book. But I honestly think that Assassin's Blade is 5 short novellas in 1 book to give us context to things, characters and stuff that come into the books later on down the line. It doesn't matter where you read Assassin's Blade, as long as you read it before Queen of Shadows, because it gives you so much context to Selena, her character, everything about her, where she's come from, what's led her to the point of ending up at the beginning of the story at Throne of Glass. It just gives you so much context. I think the ending of Crown of Midnight is a lot happens, it's really fast paced, and you just want to get into the next part of the story. Air of Fire itself is quite slow, and I read Assassin's Blade between the two, so I built up all this momentum, then went back to all these novellas, which I was just like, by this point I'm 2 books in, I know who Selena is, I know what she's like, and just kind of found it boring and a bit slow, but it was like a necessary evil. I was like, come on, just read it and get through it, because you do need to read it. And then Air of Fire is slow in general until the last, I want to say like 20%, and that is what I found difficult, and I just got so bored with it. I knew it had potential, but I wasn't enjoying it as much as I wanted to, so I stopped reading it until December last year, where I started Queen of Shadows. And when I tell you that it seriously kicks off, I said in my TikTok review of this that I feel like the first 4 books are almost like a prologue, because the story, there's so much goes on, and by the time you get to the end of it and you realise how intense this story has been, they actually just feel like prologues. I feel like the first 4 books is just setting the scene, introducing us to characters, building the characters so that we get to know them, get to know what's driving them, why they don't like this person, why they care about this person. We're building the world, we're talking about all the history that's gone on, introducing new characters quite a lot, because there are so many characters in this, but it's not daunting, it doesn't throw you off, because that was also one of my issues. From Air of Fire and Queen of Shadows, we get introduced to a lot of characters, but again, I'll get to that, because the characters are just written to absolute perfection. And then I read Queen of Shadows, I tandem read Empire of Storm and Tower of Dawn, and then into Kingdom of Ash. It is seriously heavy reading, not in terms of actually the words on the paper themselves, but just how many books there are to get through, how many pages there are in each book. Like, you get through this tandem read, you're reading 2 books at the same time, that you've had to sit, it took me 2 hours to tab the book so I knew what chapter to switch between. You're telling me that I then read a 1,300 page tandem read and I complete it, and then I've got 980 pages still to go in the last book. That tandem read should be an Olympic sport on its own, seriously. Reading in general, I just feel like it's such a mental sport sometimes, because you just have to really pay attention. Like, this is the book that you have to read slowly as well and take your time with, because it's so layered, it's so intricate, there's so much going on, there's so many characters, there's so many side characters, side stories that are all slowly interweaving into this one big incredible plot, that you have to read it slow, because you'll miss things and not understand things, and you just won't enjoy it. Like, you have to take your time with these books. I could read a 400-page book in 3 days if I wanted to. Did I read Air of Fire in 3 days? Absolutely not. It took me about 5-6 days, maybe a week, to read it, because you have to take your time. I'm not going to tell you exactly the story. This is going to be a spoiler-free review, so it does mean that there's not really a lot I can say, because it is going to give too much away. So I can't go too much into the details of the story, but essentially, Selena Sardothian is in a slave camp in Indovia. She gets taken out by the king to become the king's champion. Well, she has to actually fight in these trials to become the king's champion, and everything that happens while she's staying in the glass castle, the things she sees, the sort of things, the people she befriends in there, things that sort of get unearthed along the way, triggers, well, I mean, it just triggers the whole plot, basically. And I just cannot believe how incredible this story is, considering that SJM started writing this when she was 16. It's her mind is incredible. Like, say what you want about any author, really, any fantasy author, the way their minds work when they're creating whole new worlds, whole new magic systems, sometimes even new like religions, all these things that they introduce, politics, their own democracies, like the way that these worlds work, and they made it all up. Like, it's so incredible. With Throne of Glass, it's kind of giving Game of Thrones, but with a lot more magic and a lot lighter hearted, less adult, if you will, but it's giving Game of Thrones. There's not a lot of romance in it. Acotar is more of a romantasy than this is. This is very political. The characters and everything, the plot is the most important thing here. If you took all the romance out of this series, you would still have a very, very strong plot. Whereas I feel like with Acotar, if you took all the romance out of it, it doesn't leave a lot. There's still a storyline, but it doesn't leave a lot. I would say if you like a lot of romance, you would find this very difficult. But I don't read a lot of fantasy, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I very much typically read a lot of romance books, and I still loved it. The first book, Throne of Glass, takes place then. The second book, Crown of Midnight, is where the story really starts to unravel. Then we've got Assassin's Blade, which is where I read it don't read it there, read it first, which takes us back to give us some context to Selena Sardothien, who she is, where she's come from, who she's met along the way, like just her journey prior to Throne of Glass. Then we've got Heir of Fire, which is where other characters get introduced, and this is where the story really starts to get going, but I just found the whole book in general very slow. Then we go on to Queen of Shadows, which is one of the best books I have ever read. Everything about this whole series in general, to be honest, in terms of the pacing, the characters and everything is impeccable. It's just phenomenal. But Queen of Shadows is amazing. Like, it is a true masterpiece. The Tower of Dawn and Empire of Storms are amazing. I gave all the last 4 books 5 stars, and Kingdom of Ash is just the journey that we go on, everything that happens in that book, the pacing, it's just incredible. The world building in general, I do find that it's constantly going. Like when we get to Tower of Dawn, the whole first half of that book is essentially more world building because we're on a new continent again. The world is continuously being built throughout the story. Characters are being introduced left, right and centre, but there's so much depth to all of them, where they've come from, what their stories were prior to this. They get given so much attention. There is no stone left unturned in those characters. Like, there's characters that literally come in the last like 2 books, and not at any point did I think, I don't know you. I don't know what drives you. I don't know what you want. I don't know why you don't like this person. I don't know what happened to you before. Like, there is not a single character that left me feeling that way. And I just think it's just amazing. And I just thoroughly recommend it. I think it's incredible. My least favourite books in the series were Assassin's Blade and Heir of Fire. But my lowest rated book was like 3.5 stars. And I know there's a lot of, commotion around what people think a 3-star book is. Some people think 3 stars really awful, and some people think 3 stars is good. I actually think that you can have a good 3 stars and a bad 3 stars. But for me, 3.5 stars is a book that I enjoyed. I don't want to reread it, but I would recommend it to people. I can't get over it. I can't get over it. And with regards to the tandem read, I would thoroughly recommend doing a tandem read. Tower of Dawn cannot be skipped. There is so much context that you get in that book that you need for Kingdom of Ash, the last book. You need it. Like, you will be very confused about certain things and things that people talk about if you didn't read it. And I also just think, why wouldn't you? Why would you skip a whole 650-page book? So I personally wouldn't recommend that. If you struggle with it, I would just do the tandem read. Is the tandem read long? Yes. Is it really daunting? Yes. Is it a lot of effort? Yes. But is it worth it? 100 times yes. It is so worth it. It took me 2 weeks. You have to sit down with this series and think to yourself, it's going to take me 2 weeks. Like Goodreads, okay. Obviously I started this end of December. So we're entering a new year. I've got 100 books on my reading goal for Goodreads, and it's passive aggressively reminding me every single day to this day still that I am 7 books behind schedule. But it's not taken into account, Goodreads, that I read 3,500 pages across only 4 books. Actually, probably more than that. Like way more than that. So I'm just like, do you take that into consideration, Goodreads? If you want to split that into, your average 350, 400 page book, I'm not behind schedule. But anyway, you can tell, has mildly annoyed me, to be honest. Trying to catch up with my Goodreads reading goal, I've started the year 7 books behind schedule. But it was worth it. So I just want to put it out there and say that Aelin Galathynius, I think that's how you say her name, that's how I was pronouncing it. If I was pronouncing it wrong, then how embarrassing for me. But, there will never be an FMC better than her. It used to be Lana Myers from the Mind F series. Honestly, Aelin beats her. No, okay, they're kind of on par, but just it's hard to choose. But I think Aelin gives Lana a run for her money. If any of you have read that series, that is a dark romance, like criminal, serial, like series. Amazing. If you haven't read it, incredible, 5 stars all day long. Completely different books, but if you love that kind of FMC, because I know that a lot of people have read that, it's quite popular. If you love that kind of FMC, you will love Aelin. Just every single character in this. Manon, I'm obsessed with her. I'm obsessed with like the way that all the characters are written, like the witches and how their covens work, and the 13s, and then they're like, how you in the army you have like levels, you have like corporal, lieutenant, sergeant, like the way the witches are kind of like that, the way their covens work. I loved it. I thought it was so interesting. I love the way the magic works as well in this. Like, I don't like it when you can use magic in fantasy without consequences. So for example, in this, the deeper you delve into your magic, the more you use it, the closer you can get to burning out. But Aelin's power is so immense that she's always constantly at risk of that, but also like we need her to save the world, but you're so in love with her as a character that you also don't want her to like have a burnout. And it's tense, it's fast-paced, it's stressful, but then it's also emotional, it's heart-wrenching. I cried twice through reading this, and I never cry ever. There are very few books that have genuinely brought tears to my eyes, but there were moments in this series because of the journey that you've been through with these characters that literally were just tugging at my heartstrings, and I was in tears. Like, I'll just put it forward and say I was in tears. There's a scene at the end of Empire of Storms, which I found it so difficult to read. Not because it's like gruesome or anything like that, but just I can't even get my words out again, because this series does honestly leave me speechless at times. The series took over my life for literally collectively about 2 months, so it's very hard to let go of these characters. Only readers will get it. I hope that this review, if you haven't been sure about it, then hopefully this has tipped you over the edge to just tell you to just start it. I know it's daunting. Look at the size of it. I mean, it's basically as big as my body, so you know, it's a lot of reading. Now I can't wait to read Crescent City. I am just so excited. I've got House of Flame and Shadow ready to go as well. I was actually going to read, this is really funny, I was going to read Crescent City straight after Throne of Glass. Bearing in mind those books are like literally 700 to 800 pages each, and there's 3 of them, what was I thinking? I don't think I've read a book longer than 250 pages since I finished this series, because this was just such effort. But that effort makes it sound negative. It wasn't effort, it was a labour of love. If you're coming from having read acotar, don't go into it expecting the same, because it's not the same. It's different and it's better, in my opinion, in every single way. As much as I love acotar, I sometimes, oh God, why do I feel the need? I say something and I feel like I've offended the book, and then I look at the book and I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I take it back. Like, I didn't mean it. You know, it's better, but it's not. Like, as if a book can get offended. What if the characters can hear me? If I had a top 3 favourite series of all time, Throne of Glass is up there, 100%. Throne of Glass and Devil's Night series, probably my top 2 series ever. Completely different genres, but Throne of Glass really is in a league of its own. It truly is as good as everybody says. If you've read it, I'd love to talk to you guys in the comments about it, because I'm just still not over it. It's been 2 weeks. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching my really, probably, I'm gonna go to edit this back and feel like this was really chaotic and I'm not really saying anything. I'm just saying a whole lot of nothing. I'm probably gonna have forgotten a lot of things to say, so I'm probably gonna just be editing speech in left, right and centre, but anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. What was that? What was that? Oh my God. Well, you know what, if I get murdered, it's going to be caught on camera, so come at me.